Gaurav, it's a pleasure to have you with us. This is a session that I've
Thank,
been looking forward to.
thank you so much, Ashu. Thank you.
Gaurav, you were in a very, very exciting business, right? Something that we've been known for as a country, right? For our craftsmanship. It's something which is celebrated globally. But unfortunately, when we talk about luxury industry, right, as a whole, India is, we've somewhere lagged, right, in terms of creating our own brands, right? Somewhere creating indigenous brands that have ruled the global markets, right? This is a discussion that I'm particularly looking forward to because there are many such entrepreneurs who are working in this space, who are working to build large scalable brands. So this is a discussion that I'm actually looking forward to, where of course we talk about what you're doing, but we also talk about what are the challenges, and how can we sort of possibly improve them in the process and stuff like that, right? But before we do that, Gaurav, why don't you introduce yourself to us, right? You've been at it for a very long time. Why don't you
Yeah.
take us through the journey and then we dive into the specifics?
I am Gaurav. I am the founder of Jaipur Watch Company. The company was started in the year 2013,
Sure.
and we've been known for building watches using antique coins. We've been known for building watches, which are bespoke in nature, made as per the client's design.
Sure.
And we, use a lot of elements which are owned to the country and which
Right.
we inculcate in the watches and develop them as a product.
Sure.
So we use local artisans, local craftsmen, local skills, and we get them on a miniature version, which is like a wristwatch, which is like the
Right.
smallest version. Yeah.
Very interesting. Gaurav, how did this happen? Was this something that you always wanted to do, or this is something that happened, in the process of, it became a passion. From a passion project, it became a business. How did it all happen?
Your second part is kind of true, where you said it was a passion project which became a business. So what
Right.
happened? I was a collector of coins,
Sure.
and I was very fond of watches since my childhood.
Sure.
And I always had this habit of opening up my own watches and seeing how they function.
Right.
And one fine day, I was opening a watch, and there was a coin, placed on the desk next to
Right.
it.
Right.
And that coin, by nature, has a hole in it. That's the
Interesting.
design of the coin.
Right.
So somehow it struck me. I thought, why not I pick this coin and put it in the watch and see how it looks.
Right.
And I did that. I started wearing it, and a lot of people started asking me, that where did you get it from, and
Sure.
can you make one for me, and all those questions started coming in.
Right.
And then I thought, okay, this is a good thing to do, and I should get into it. So that's
Right.
how this actually started.
Very interesting, Gaurav.
Yeah.
Uh, while I'm thinking of what you are saying, it's also very difficult. And why? How did the team come together, right? That's a very, very complex piece. When we talk about all of this, right? And given that you didn't come from, say, a background, particularly which was in
Yeah.
the say watchmaking or this particular aspect, right?
Not
That
even
has been
jewelry.
that must,
Yeah.
not even jewelry, right? So that must have been very, very difficult, right? How did that piece happen?
So, it was more about the passion. I wanted to bring this product to reality. I wanted to make a watch for consumers. So
Sure.
the idea was there, but then obviously there were a lot of hindrances. I was an
Sure.
outsider. There were no, people I knew in the industry who would have helped me.
Right.
And also making it a business, building an idea is something else, and then making it into a
Sure.
business.
Sure.
These are two very different things.
Right.
So it was a very long journey. It took me almost 8 to 9 months to make my first prototype
Right.
and bring it to life. And the first product was outsourced to some other factory.
Sure.
And after 2 years of doing the outsourcing business through my designs, we
Right.
decided to set up our own factory in India.
Interesting. Okay.
And in 2015, we started our own manufacturing facility. So from that point onwards, all our watches we are making in India.
Oh, wonderful. And all of this happens in Jaipur?
No, in Jaipur we take care of the assembly part, but
Okay.
in Bangalore we manufacture the cases and the
Interesting.
components of the watches. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Gaurav, what is the team construct right now?
So currently we have like 7 people in Jaipur office, and we
All right.
have 14 people in my Bangalore factory.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. That is very, very interesting. Gaurav, can you just take us to the process of doing this? For example, design is very critical, right? And you essentially, and I think every single piece that you're building is bespoke, right? It's very different from the other piece, right? So, I mean, this is not an assembly line function that we're talking about, right? This is
So
something which is,
there are
uh,
two
yeah,
categories of products we deal in. One is a
sure.
bespoke and one is a Pret collection.
Okay,
So Pret collection we do in a limited run of say 100 units, 200 units, or 300 units maximum.
sure, sure,
And then there is bespoke, which is made to order.
right,
But then again, in a line of business which is watches, 100
mhm,
or 300 units is also not a very large number.
right,
So there is a challenge in itself when you start with the designing process
sure,
and when you speak to the vendors. So for example, we need to get the hands of the watches which are outsourced, dials of
right,
the watches are outsourced
right,
sometimes. So then when you speak to the vendor and you tell them that, we want such quantity, such small quantity,
sure,
they're least interested in working with you. So
right,
you end up manufacturing a lot of things in-house only because
right.
of these issues. Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. Uh, and and when you're doing that, what is the design inspiration, right? Where does the design come from? So is it like, is there a research process which is in it, or is this very liberal creative process that you say you have, where you're saying, we evaluate a few things, and it's about visualization in terms of how it comes together, and then we put it together, and then from there the product comes out, right? Take us through the design process. I think when you're talking about bespoke, when you're talking about luxury or limited item
Yeah.
markets, right, and especially watches where there is people have an opinion, people have certain thoughts, and so many other things, right? How does the design piece come together?
See, the design, when you'll see the whole philosophy of Jaipur Watch Company, you'll see the entire design language is very, I would say, vintage, very traditional in the whole philosophy of the brand. We don't do like modern watches. We won't be doing diver watches. We won't be doing chronographs. We won't be doing smart watches. These are the kind of watches which don't fit into our design strategy.
Sure.
And we have a very liberal design process when it comes to working on the design.
Right.
So I'll take you through an example where we have a bespoke watch requirement. So
Sure.
that is a time when you have to sit with the client, you have to understand his requirement, you have to read
Right.
his mind, then you have to draw that product for him on the screen or on a sketch,
Sure.
show it to him, and then ask him whether are we going on the right track, am I
Right.
able to read your mind correctly.
Sure.
So that is a very interesting process. Every watch you have to sit with the client, interact with him at every step of the development of the product,
Right.
and then you keep updating the design. So this is how the bespoke product works. When it
Okay.
comes to the Pret collection,
Right.
we have to consider various parameters when we design our own watches. So for
Sure.
example, if it's a coin watch, the first and
Right.
foremost, the thing which we have to understand, these are the real coins, real antique coins, what we utilize for our watches.
Right.
So these are not available in abundant quantity. That
Okay.
is first.
Sure.
Secondly, we only use unused condition coins, the UNC coins, as the technical term
Okay.
says.
Okay.
So even though those coins date back 60, 70, 80 years, but they are unused,
Right.
even though from that era.
Sure.
So the availability of the coin is the first criteria.
Right.
Then, based on the coin, what are the feasible designs? Utilizing that coin,
Sure.
we work around that. And then comes the technical part, the machinery of the part, the height of the watch, the design of the watch, the size of the watch. All these elements fall into place after that.
Sure.
So it's a complicated process, but it's a very enjoyable process. I enjoy doing my work. In fact, some of the watches, I've been working for three years because I could not collect those coins.
Right.
And now, after 3 years, now I can say, okay, now I have like 300 coins or something. Now I can launch one collection out of it.
Right.
Because you can't go to a shop and say, okay, give me 300 coins.
Sure. Correct.
I have to buy them from collectors. Someone gives me 20 coins, someone gives me 10 coins,
Right.
and then I have to build it over a period of time.
Correct. Very
So,
interesting.
so it's a long journey sometimes. One collection can take up to 3 years to come to life.
Gaurav, I had a question. In fact, you've kind of highlighted, you've actually led me into it, right?
Yeah.
Which is essentially around, the timelines around building a product, right? Typically, luxury is something where you typically tend to spend a little more time
Yeah.
because, like you highlighted, right, components are difficult to source, and I think that construct essentially makes it more desirable, right,
Right.
for people, right? And so what is the typical, on an average, what is kind of time that it takes? For example, in print it'll be different, right? But in a collector's piece, it's going to be different. Bespoke, it's going to be different, right? If you could give me a sense of that.
So a bespoke watch, normally the minimum time we take is 30 days.
Okay.
And it can go up to, so the maximum we have spent on a watch is around 6 months. And so the client has to sit patiently, and we also spend our 6 months just to make that one single product.
Sure.
So,
Very interesting.
you
And how
know,
about Pet?
Pret, again, like I told you, for example, the next collection, what I'm launching, I've waited for 3 years
Right.
and now I'm in a position to launch that collection.
Sure.
So, say for example, yesterday I was like in a position to say that, okay, now my coins are ready. My
Right.
design was ready 3 years back only, my design was made.
Right.
Okay. But now my coins are ready. So now I need to start working on developing this product.
Very interesting.
Now, today, if I start, it will take me, say, I would say 4 to 5 months to launch that collection.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, very interesting. Okay. And Gaurav, typically, supply chain, and like you also highlighted, right, while we talk about the time, you also highlight the supply chain, right? So
Yeah.
supply chain is essentially only complex when it comes to the coin collection piece, or is it complicated even otherwise?
No, it's
Uh,
it's complicated otherwise also. See, so the
okay.
movements of the watches, the machinery
Right.
which is in the watch,
Right.
we either use Japanese or we use Swiss machineries.
Okay.
Okay. So sourcing them and getting them in a particular quantity, that takes a lot of time because
Right.
there are challenges when it comes to Swiss machineries.
Sure.
Some of the companies have defined rules now that they won't supply outside their own group.
Okay.
So these kind of challenges keeps on coming up, and then we have to find a way around it and then work with that. Then coming to components, so like I said earlier also, when you speak to dial manufacturers, you tell them
Sure.
that I'm only making 200 watches of this collection, can you give me
Right.
200 of these dials?
Right.
So the dial manufacturer will say, I won't even touch this project unless you do 500 or 1000 with me.
Right.
So there are times when I have to do 1000 and utilize 200.
Oh. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is uh, that is extremely difficult condition to manage.
Yeah, it is a very difficult condition to manage when you talk about really really genuinely limited edition pieces,
Right.
because this is what is the problem.
Sure.
And when people, sometimes people have told me, just by writing limited edition doesn't mean that you can make the cost high.
Right.
I've faced these kind of
Yeah.
situations when
I
I've
know. I know what
interacted
you mean.
with the
Yes.
clients.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so one needs to really understand that these are actually limited edition pieces, and we have paid 5 times for the components just to make 200 of these watches.
Right.
Yeah,
Interesting. Interesting.
yeah.
Gaurav, what is the distribution like, right? I mean, is this largely made to order? How do you distribute your prep line? Do you have partners? Is this available in certain stores? Is this available in high street? How does distribution work for you?
So when it comes to distribution of Pret collection, we are retailing through 7 Oberoi Tijoris,
Okay.
and we are retailing at one Taj Khazana in New Delhi.
Right.
Okay, and when it comes to bespoke is majorly direct,
Right.
because that is where your involvement is required with the client.
Sure.
Then we have one channel partner who's based in Bahrain. He
Okay.
retails our watches out of Bahrain, and he also takes care of the Dubai market for us.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And Gaurav, if I may ask, right, what are the sales volumes like? I mean, this is not something which is mass manufactured, right? This is something which is very very limited. I mean, there is a leading question that to it as well that I have, right? But what is the current sales like, right? And how, in fact, if you could give me a context in terms of how is the market shaped up, right? I mean, you've been in this business for a
Yeah,
reasonable amount of time, right?
yeah.
India has evolved in a very different way, right? I think our aspirations have changed. We understand what global luxury now is, and of course there are parallels. So I think there is a lot more awareness which is really sort of coming to the market, right? What are your how's the market evolved? How's the sales numbers like?
See, I'll tell you, when I started in 2013,
Sure.
I was the only salesman for my team. Okay.
Right.
I didn't have like a lot of staff. I started
Mhm.
with 3 people in 2013 when I
Right.
started. Okay.
Right.
And I used to be the front end salesman
Sure.
at the counter, retail counter also. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Because that's how you start small.
Correct.
And that is how you get the honest feedback of the clients also.
Right.
And I've heard things from people saying Indian brand can't be so expensive.
Right.
How can an Indian watch be priced at 20,000 rupees plus?
Sure.
What is so unique about being Indian?
Right.
Okay. These were the things which I used to hear in 2013.
Sure.
Now we are sitting in 2021. I'll tell you, the perception has totally changed.
Right.
We have, when people ask me, how do you define your client categories?
Sure.
Okay. So there is one category which I have added in my client list: people who are fan of fantastic Indian art.
Okay. Very interesting. Okay.
So that is the new category which in itself which has come in the last 8 years of my journey,
Right.
where people have decided to buy Indian brands. They
Interesting.
are favoring Indian brands over other brands. There
Right.
are clients who have come to me and who have told me, I buy Swiss watches. Why
Hmm.
not I buy Indian watches at the same price where I'm getting a good price?
Right.
So I've seen that kind of change or shift in the mindset of people.
Hmm.
Uh, People used to tell me 20,000 रुपए की घड़ी नहीं बिकेगी. The single highest ticket size of the watch what I've sold is 25 lakh rupees or 20
Right.
को piece.
Right.
So that is in itself is an achievement for an Indian brand selling a 25 lakh rupees single unit
Right.
of one watch. So the mindset has changed, perception has changed. People have started accepting that Indian products can be at par with the international products. I
Very
won't
interesting.
say we are superior because see, we
Right.
still don't do our own watch movements. We
Right.
are dependent on the Japanese or the Swiss companies for the movements.
Sure.
But hopefully, in next 15 years or 20 years from now, we'll be in a position to have our own movements also.
Right.
India as a country, if you'll see, we don't have a long history. We are just 75 or 78 years old as a country,
Right.
when you talk about independent India.
Sure.
Whereas there are Swiss brands which are like 125 years or 200-year-old watchmaking histories.
Right.
So we'll come there. We have risen. When you talk about sales volume, that was your first question.
Sure.
So I started by selling around 200 watches in my first year.
Okay.
Okay. And now by the eighth year, we are selling, when you talk about the brand Jaipur Watch Company, we are selling around 1700 to 1800 watches per year in the
Right.
brand name Jaipur Watch Company. But
Okay.
we do a lot of white label manufacturing, we do a lot of corporate gifting,
Okay.
and we have done collections in the range of 10,000 units for some orders
Okay.
coming from an Indian watch brand.
That is
Earlier,
amazing.
these 10,000 watches ka order, when there was a bulk order, it used to go to China
Right.
because there are 10,000 watches ka order, we'll get a cheaper price from China.
Right.
But these orders have started shifting to India now.
Very interesting. I think Gaurav, in a way, I see a Make in India champion in you, right? I think and I think there's definitely a very critical need to celebrate entrepreneurs like yourself, right? But tell me this, right? So has this changed? For example, when you say that there is bulk manufacturing that is happening, there is white label which is happening, we're essentially happening in China, and now say that opportunities come to you. Is this like a post-COVID thing, or this shift was something which happened for a
Uh,
very different reason?
I would say, the sentiment started building when the Make in India campaign started.
Sure.
And that has really helped.
Okay.
Because of that sentiment, a lot of people started actually deciding to, not to buy a product which is not made in India and go completely local.
Sure.
And we've seen that shift because there are
Sure.
clients who have told me, that I would spend 1 lakh rupees and buy a watch from Switzerland. I'll spend 50,000 rupees and get a same watch in India only. Why
Right.
would I pay 1 lakh rupees for a watch? Yeah. So that
Interesting.
shift has happened, and I've seen people, coming to us and appreciating, that. Recently, I had a client. He's a CEO of very very big company in India,
Right.
very
Right.
big multinational company,
Mm-hmm.
and he told me that he has placed order of 6 7 watches with me, and he told me, Gaurav, I want you to write a handwritten note mentioning the story and design inspiration about each watch when you
Right.
give me the watch, you know
Wow.
because I want to know that what went in your mind and why Indians could not design watches before you came.
Sure. That is such an amazing
Yeah,
piece that you highlighted.
yeah.
Gaurav, that brings me to a point, right? What are some of the key challenges, right, when uh, when you sort of as an Indian entrepreneur, as somebody who's say operating out of Jaipur, who got into something which, for example, he did not necessarily have a background in, right? So you've literally built everything from scratch, right? What are some of the key challenges that you faced in your journey, right? And before you answer that, I mean, I have a question which is actually a larger sort of question, right? How do you differentiate yourself, from, or how do you position yourself vis-a-vis the international brands, right? I mean, what how do you sort of play that, right? Because I mean, like I said at the outset, right? We've been known. I mean, when it's luxury, right? You essentially go to, and like you also highlighted, right? You're essentially thinking of pretty much Europe, right? And that's essentially how the way it's been packaged, right? When it comes to the brand coming out of India, how do you position that, right? How difficult is that in to sort of market it within the country?
See, there are a few steps you need to take, when you
Sure.
start a journey which says building a brand.
Hmm.
So building a brand is a very tedious process, and I still don't think that we are in a position to say that we have built a brand. People still don't know us.
Right.
A lot of people still don't know us.
Sure.
When you look outside your comfort zone, or when you look outside, say, I would say South India, or
Sure.
when I say East India,
Right.
these are the territories where people haven't even heard about us probably.
Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
so it is a very tedious process. It's a long process, and it takes a lot of time to build.
Right.
So it's been 8 years, I would say another 10 years, and then people will start probably recognizing the brand Jaipur
Right.
Watch Company as a brand, that okay, there is a brand. When I
Right.
started in 2013, I went to a few watch retailers. I told them, why don't you sell my products?
Sure.
They said, what is the warranty on your product? I said, two
Right.
years. So
Right.
they said, your company is not even 2 years old. What is the guarantee you will be there in the market after two
Right.
years? Who
Right.
will take care of the products?
Right.
So that acceptance level will take time.
Right.
I've been to big retailers, one of the largest retailers of the country. Told them that why don't you sell my watches?
Right.
The feedback we get from them is that we don't sell Indian brands.
Right.
They are based out of India. Their bread and butter is in India,
Right.
and the feedback they give is that we don't sell Indian brands.
Right.
So this mindset will take time, to change,
Sure.
and it will definitely change, because when they'll see brands like us rising,
Right.
they'll definitely want to have a pie of it.
But
So
doesn't that makes it difficult for you? I mean, given that
it is
the
very
local
difficult,
the local market is not supporting you, right? Essentially, that means is that familiarity of the brand will take a lot of time, like you said, right?
Yeah,
There's another 8-10 years of effort which is going to go into building it, right?
yeah.
So, I mean, it's a very difficult thing.
It is a very difficult thing, and you have to wait patiently, because one thing I've realized is that there are tough times, obviously, when you are building a brand from scratch.
Sure.
But if you wait patiently, you'll get your opportunities. You'll find your share in the
Right.
market. It comes automatically to you. You just have to keep working towards it. I
Very interesting.
faced a lot of difficulties from suppliers, because
Right.
initially when I went to suppliers told me, we don't, the world class suppliers which are based out of India, you'll be
Right.
surprised. There are few suppliers who are 100% export oriented when it comes to watch components,
Okay.
which are based out of India. Not many people know about them.
Right.
Okay. And when I approached them that, why don't you supply to me? The first answer I got from them, we don't supply to Indian brands,
Okay.
because our products are very superior and Indian brands can't pay.
Okay.
So now that perception has changed. The same supplier, in fact, 1 hour back, I was speaking to that supplier, and I told him, there is this requirement and I want some only 100 pieces of this particular component.
Right.
He said, sir, we don't do it for anyone, but only you are the exception, which my boss has told me that only your brand is the exception. Even if you require 50 pieces, we'll make for you.
Right.
So that perception has changed in the last 8 years, and
Very.
it will change for good, because it is changing
Right.
for good. The trend is there, and
Right.
it will continue to change. And after I started my brand, at least 3 or 4 more watch brands started after that.
Right.
So that is a good sign, because there is a
I think
market.
I agree, and I think the creative economy is kind of picking up, right? I think
Yeah.
there's more financing available. But Gaurav, what have been some of the key challenges that you've faced, right, while you're building?
So the
Uh,
key challenges I faced first was the supplier part, where
sure.
the suppliers were not willing to support,
Right.
and the second part was, of course, where the retail points,
Right.
retail points were not willing to take our products.
Sure.
So when you build a watch brand, where will you retail from? You'll
Right.
obviously retail from a watch store, right?
Correct.
That is the first idea what you have in your mind,
Right.
and that is the same idea I had in my mind when I started my watch brand.
Right.
But when I went to the watch stores, I realized no one was willing to accept my product.
Sure.
Everyone said, at this price point we'll get an international product,
Right.
why should we sell an Indian watch?
Right.
So then, in order to overcome that, we thought beyond the box, and we decided to retail via stores which sell, fantastic Indian art, Indian
Right.
stuff. So which comes out essentially to the Oberoi Tijoris, the Taj Khazanas,
Right.
and stores. There are some spectacular stores. There was a store in Bombay by the name of the Big Door, which used to sell Indian art and stuff like that. So we took that channel of retail,
Right.
and we have been successful with that channel.
Interesting.
So instead of going for the traditional ways, we decided to go for the non-traditional ways.
Right.
And that actually worked in our favor, because that helped us position our brand in a much different way as
Right.
it would have been positioned as a regular watch brand.
Interesting. Gaurav, how big of financing has been a challenge, right? All of this is self-financed. How are you financing the operations? Is there external capital that you've raised? Give us background of that.
So financing was a very big challenge, because when I wanted to start with this business,
Sure.
it required a lot of capital. So the first step was to obviously not build your own manufacturing facility, rather outsource the first two collections.
Sure.
And then after that, if you are in a better position, you build your own manufacturing facility.
Right.
That was decided on day one.
Sure.
Secondly, to build the first collection, I was looking for capital. So obviously, the first thing you do is you go to your parents, you go to your family, you go to your
Right.
friends,
Yeah.
to seek for a capital.
Right.
And somehow it didn't work out for me. So I had to sell my car as the first source of capital for me.
My God.
And second, a few of my childhood friends, they pulled in, they said, okay, we'll support your idea.
Right.
And that's how the company started. The first capital was by selling my own car.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so that was the first step I took. After that, the business has been self-sufficient in terms of finances. We haven't
Right.
raised any capital. There are no loans on the company.
Right.
And whatever loans were there, we repaid, because the loans were only on the machinery part,
Sure.
which have been repaid now.
Right.
And we were lucky enough that the first collection was a grand success for us. And
Wonderful.
because of that, we could, circulate the capital and build on to it.
Right.
And we've been rotating, the first capital of my car till now.
I think this is so unique of an Indian founder, right? I think the will to survive, right,
Yeah.
is so unique to an Indian founder, right? And I think we talk about a lot of tech founders and so on and so forth, right? But I think the fact that there are brands and there are companies and there are founders in the SME MSME space, SMB space, right,
Yeah.
who are fighting it out every single day without necessarily a lot of say fancy financing. And they're carving out their own niche, right? And they are fighting it out in the market. And of course, there is a certain image that they've created for themselves. There is a certain lineage of clients and customers that they've built for themselves. And the kind of stuff that they're doing is absolutely fantastic. And I think the way you highlighting it, that your first set of financing was by selling your own car. I think is going to be inspiration for many to sort of not necessarily sell car, but to fight it out while they are in their journeys of building their own brands, right? Gaurav, a question which is I'm going to take a side step, right? And essentially talk of D2C, right? Now, essentially what has happened is that this is a new buzzword which is out there in the market, right? Which is direct to consumer, right? And this is something which is which was happening in a certain form and way, but I think COVID kind of fast tracked this entire thing,
Yeah,
right?
it did.
And I think you are also, for example, extremely active on social media, right? It becomes a huge channel for you to build that, visibility for the brand, of consumers who are buying that brand. So there is a certain influence that you create, right? Is D2C the way forward in terms of distribution for Jaipur Watch Company?
See, definitely D2C is the way forward for, I would say, most of the consumer brands.
Mhm.
Okay. Because especially, in the luxury segment, I won't say consumer brands in the normal segment, but consumer brands in the luxury segment, D2C is the way forward.
Right,
And uh, the first four watches which I sold,
right.
okay, were sold on Facebook.
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
The first four watches. When I started, there was no Instagram
Right.
in 2013.
Sure.
So, and the first store which I found who was willing to partner with me was also through Facebook. Okay. So, I've been a fan of social media since day one,
Right.
because that's how I found my first consumer and that's how I found my first retailer.
Right.
We are heavily focused currently, obviously because of COVID, but I would say one thing: first 4 years we did not had MRPs mentioned on our website.
Right.
It was all price on request.
Right.
It has been in the last 4 years we have started focusing on direct sales to the clients, where we have realized that with D2C there is an opportunity for the client sitting in the C city or in the B city to
Right.
look at your products,
Sure.
and that has really helped us. I have touched clients from cities जिनका मैंने नाम भी नहीं सुना था, and people have bought watches from those cities,
Right.
and those cities were never in my mind also, that we should focus on marketing in these particular cities.
Right.
So that has opened up a new horizon for us as a brand.
Right.
And currently, we're not doing fantastic, but we're doing decent numbers on our own website.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
And I think that also gives you a way to know your clients up close and personal, right? And I think from graduating from, say, a Pret line into more bespoke line and so on and so forth, right? So I think that
definitely.
connect is very, very important. And given that, I mean, not a lot of consumer brands would have that kind of an advantage or an edge, right? But in your case, you do, because there is a limited quantity that you are sort of making in the process, right? So I think you had that time to go out and really engage with these clients and customers, right? And I think
So,
that
Ashu, when it came to the COVID period, last
yeah,
year, not this particular wave, but the last
right,
wave, because that was more of a shock, because this
sure,
wave we were more prepared because of the first wave.
sure,
So, that particular period, there were a period of almost 2 months when we had zero sales.
right,
Okay. And which I think happened with a lot of brands, that,
right,
sales had gone down to almost zero for the first two months when the COVID lockdown had just started. Okay. That was the period which gave us time where we decided to look into our database of
right.
the last 6-7 years. I started interacting with almost all my clients on a personal level.
Wow,
Okay, I took out the database because I had all the time in the world. Everyone
sure,
was sitting at home.
right,
Okay, so I started interacting with a say X plus ticket size clients.
right,
I made a list out of that, and I started interacting with all my clients on a personal level. And that, in the period of the lockdown was, I think, March, April, May. That
right,
was the period last year. And June, July, people started working again. And in the month of August, we had a new launch.
right,
So that communication which I did with the clients during the lockdown period,
right.
and in August when we had a new launch,
Hmm.
we saw a super spike in the sales
Wow,
that actually compensated for the 3 months of zero sales.
wonderful. Right,
We did better than the previous year in the COVID year.
right,
It was only because of the one-to-one direct interaction with the clients what we did,
right, right.
and that actually helped us survive, and not even survive. Rather, we did better than the previous financial year.
Wonderful. I think you're out of lucky few, right? Who can rave about the fact that they've performed much better, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a wonderful and a positive piece that you kind of highlighted. Uh, Gaurav, one particular question that I have, right, is that and I mean, this is a question that I ask to a lot of people, right? And of course, I'm building my own thesis around it. Is essentially that COVID has changed the way we consume, right? And that was essentially because I mean, India has been a market of layers, right? We've operated at many layers, right? So there is an urban India, and then of course there is a middle tier India, and then of course there is a rural India, right? And of course we have a lot of regional complexity as well, right? But what possibly COVID did was that it brought us to everybody to the same medium of consumption, right?
Right.
Content became very large, right? All of us were consuming the same, right? So the difference between, say, a Jaipur and a Delhi or a Bangalore kind of reduced, right? So there was a certain homogeneity that came in, but that also added to a very, an added layer of complexity, right? Which was around influence, right? So today, the influence that we have is much higher, and that is because of content and us consuming from content. Second, it's going to shift preference patterns very fast, right? What has also happened is that it's made difficult for companies to understand the trends that are going to come up, right? and they've started to use a lot of technologies. For example, there's a huge conversation that is going around AI and and ML and so on and so forth, right? When you look at a luxury brand, right? I mean, one way to look at it is saying that, listen, we are timeless, right? So what we're creating is timeless, and that's a hedge, and that's at a design level of what we
Yeah.
do, right? And the other way to do it is that saying that, listen, we understand that this is a challenge, right? We understand the preference orders are going to change. We understand a lot of millennials are now going to be earning, right? Their aspirations are going to be very different, and we're using technology to sort of comprehend what could our design look like, or what could our product look like, right? So which do you think is the right approach, especially in a business like you are, uh, to sort of I mean, which is going to help you become more prevalent, more relevant, and also increase the longevity of the business.
Okay, so coming to use of technology in a business like luxury watches,
Sure.
we have been when it comes to bespoke watches, when we work with the clients, we give them 2D sketches of the products before they go into manufacturing,
All right.
and we give them 3D videos of every single watch before it goes into manufacturing, where the client can see the watch from all angles. That
Okay.
how this is how exactly his product will look when it
Interesting.
comes to life.
Right.
So that is a bit of technology which we have been using since a long
Okay.
time. Now, adding technology to the website, we are currently working on developing a tool
Right.
where, like you have seen all these eyeglasses websites where they have
Visualization
a
tool.
virtual try on,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So we are working on virtual try on modules which will be added in our website very soon,
Okay.
where a client can actually put his wrist on the screen and see how the watch will fit, touch,
Right.
and feel the product. So
Right.
that is one thing. The second thing, what we are working on is how we can build a loyalty program for our existing consumers. It
Interesting.
is a very traditional marketing,
Right.
but when you add it with rewards and make it more interesting, I think that is one point which will work. Another technology piece what we are working on is, since we work on bespoke watches where a client can
Right.
come and design his own watch, we
Right.
are building on adding a module on the website where a client can come and design his own watch from scratch.
Interesting.
So a client can come, select the body of the watch, select the dial of the watch, select the strap of the watch, select the
Right.
hand of the watch, and he can see on screen this is how his watch will look, and then he can place the order, and then we'll make the watch as per that.
Very
So we
interesting.
so we are adding elements of technology, but they are obviously limited. Being a small company, obviously we can't invest very much on the technology, but
Right.
what we are adding it will be useful for the clients.
Very interesting. Very
Yeah,
interesting. I think I like the entire thing, that the way you build it, right? Which is
yeah,
very engagement driven, right? You're making them a part of the process, right? Which
exactly.
brings in a very different kind of ownership. That's something that will not see in a lot of other international luxury brands. I think just a lot of you can really talk about it. I think, but the value that they're going to talk about is going to be very different, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's a very interesting perspective. Gaurav, you've been very active on social media, right? What are some of the things that you think are important for to the brand, right? What are some of those things that you've been doing which you think have worked for you on social media, right? In terms of creating right influence and awareness of the brand.
See, you have to be responsive. That is first.
Sure.
You have to take the comments, be it a bad comment or a good comment,
Sure.
because social media is like complete freedom of speech. You'll hear a lot of bad comments also.
Sure.
You'll hear good comments also.
Sure.
So the response time has to be very good when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to social media, because this is how we talk internally in our team that this lead is super hot. Close it irrespective whatever time of the day it is,
Sure.
be it at 10:30 in the night, be it at 11:30 in the night. If you are awake, if you have read my message, go ahead and close this lead.
Right.
So response time, be responsive, be it a good comment or a bad comment, you have to react back to it.
Right.
So these are few important things which we believe in. The
Interesting.
quality of the creatives. Now you'll see when I started Instagram, uh, the earlier the camera qualities were also not good.
Right. Right.
2015 when
Yeah.
Instagram had started,
Right.
and now if you will see how things have changed, the social media is altogether a different ball game. I
I agree.
have two people dedicated for social media in the company,
Right.
whose job is only to handle the social media.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Gaurav, what are the next couple of years like, right? How's the international market looking for you, right? I mean, we would love to see an Indian brand venturing into international markets, and essentially, what international brands have done to the Indian market, essentially an Indian brand doing the same, right? So what is international game plan for you? I mean, you mentioned Bahrain at the start of the interaction, right?
Yeah.
But what are your plans?
So we are very slow in the Middle East right now, obviously, because building a brand requires a lot of investment.
Sure,
So what we are planning to do is next step for us is Dubai,
sure,
and we are in talks with the local distributor again,
sure.
who is in the industry currently, who is a watch retailer since last almost 50 or 60 years.
Okay,
They are willing to take our brand on board,
right,
and we are working on a plan where we have a proper launch in the country, where we have a proper PR program, we have a proper marketing branding exercise.
right,
Based on that, we'll be doing a launch in Dubai, hopefully, if things don't go bad again, because this plan was supposed to happen in this year,
right.
but since things went bad and
Yeah,
the production was stopped, we are low on inventories and all those things. So hopefully in 2022 by May, we should be in a position to have a decent launch in the Dubai market first step. The second project, what we are doing is we are launching a product on Kickstarter.com.
right.
Kickstarter is very popular internationally for building ideas into reality.
Sure.
So the concept for us is to launch a product on Kickstarter in order to cater a US market, and that will help us reach to the right set of clients. So these are the
Interesting.
two steps which are in pipeline.
And
And
how about areas like Hong Kong, Bangkok? I mean, these are very
see,
savvy markets, right? Singapore,
when you talk about watch markets, we've done a lot of study.
sure,
As you are saying, it's correct. 60% of international watch sales come from China and Hong Kong and
right,
Singapore, that
right.
area. But uh, for us, that is not the right market, because those sales figures, what you're talking about, are for the established brands.
Sure.
So I would rather see myself in a market where people are more open to accepting unknown brands and those brands who offer value for money and who have more history and heritage to talk about.
And I think also the fact that there is a certain Indian lineage that exists, right? And I think the Middle East, for example,
Yeah,
specific Dubai, right, has a very large representation of Indians who are operating out of that market, right? So and
exactly.
I understand where you're coming from, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Uh, and I think that's a good prioritization that I think you have at hand, right?
Yeah.
Or the way you've done it. What are next couple of years like? What are next couple? So where do we see the Jaipur Watch Company next, say, 4 5 years?
So, like I said, obviously we'll have a very solid international presence in one of the markets. If not in a lot of markets, but I would say one or two
Sure,
markets, we'll have a very solid international presence.
sure,
There will be a lot of interesting launches coming from our side, and we are working on some very interesting products which
right,
are going to be 100% made in India. When you talk about the movement side, it's a
sure,
big thing when it comes to watches. What is the machinery inside the watch?
right.
So we are working on a product which has, a machinery which can proudly be said that this machinery is also made in India.
Very
So,
interesting,
so we are working on a watch which is 100% Indian,
right.
and that will be a very big milestone for us.
Very interesting. And do we see precious, semi-precious stones?
Uh,
Uh,
that, that is already
the
there.
voice
That is
crystals.
already there. That is already there. If you'll open our website, you'll check the bespoke collection. We work with a lot of sapphires. We work with a lot of diamonds. We
Right.
work with a lot of precious stones. Yeah.
Interesting, interesting.
Yeah.
Gaurav, advice that you would have for entrepreneurs who are making in India for the world. I mean, of course, for the Indian market is understood, but I think we're making it for the world. The aspiration is very global, right? What are some of your thoughts? I think there is definitely there are very very interesting takeaways from your journey, right? But what are your say top 2 or 3 advices to them?
See, I would say the market is tough. You need to sustain. You need to, just stay in the market. That is one first. That never give up. That is first thing. The second thing, never underestimate your own product. Never let people decide whether your product is superior or inferior to a particular, comparative brand or a country.
Right.
You know, always have faith in your own product, and if you give value to the clients, you'll definitely find your own market and you'll find your own clients.
Interesting. Gaurav, with that, thank you so much. It was a
Thank you so
pleasure to
much,
have you
Ash.
with us. I think this was an absolutely smashing session. I mean, and when I sort of talk to founders who really build their way, through, they've established their brands without, necessarily, worrying about, how the competition is going to shape up,
Yeah.
engaging with the clients and customers directly is a very different kind of confidence, right? Right, for founders, and I think in entrepreneurship in general, right? And I think there is so much that founders can learn from your journey. Thank you, Gaurav. It's a
Thank you so
pleasure to
much.
have you with us.
Thank you so much, Ashu. I look forward. Thank you. Take care.